The war had lasted 4 years, and Earth was on the edge of extinction. The skies were no longer blue. Smoke and ash filled the air as cities burned under the relentless attacks of the alien invaders. The Zorth, a brutal insectoid species, had come to Earth with one goal: to conquer and destroy. They were merciless, and nothing stood in their way. At the heart of the conflict stood Lieutenant Ryan Hayes, a veteran pilot. He had fought in countless battles against the Zorth forces, and yet, every time he thought the war might end, the enemy struck back harder. Ryan had lost everything: his family, his friends, his home. Nothing was left of the life he once knew. But there was one thing Ryan still had: his duty. It was this duty that kept him going. Even as humanity's hope dwindled, Ryan fought on. As he soared through space in his fighter, the Viper, he felt the weight of every loss. His squadron had been destroyed in an earlier battle, and now he was the only one left. The rest of the Earth Expeditionary Force had fallen back to their last stronghold. The Earth Defense Fleet, stationed in orbit around Earth, the alien queen, Scarith, had led her armies to this point. The war had become personal for her, as it had for Ryan. Scarith had been merciless, leaving a trail of destruction wherever she went. She was powerful, both physically and mentally, with a psychic link to every soldier under her command. To defeat her would take everything Ryan had left, and he was ready to give it. As the human fleet faced the Zorth forces in the vastness of space, Ryan's fighter, the Viper, was one of the last ships in the battle. The odds were impossible. The Zorth Queen had summoned her full strength to Earth's doorstep. Yet, Ryan remained calm, his eyes focused on the sky before him. He knew that this battle might be his last. Lieutenant Hayes. Came the voice of his commander through the radio. The Zorth Queen has entered the system. Prepare for the final assault. We can't hold out much longer. Ryan didn't respond. He was beyond words now. There was only the mission. The Viper darted through space, weaving in and out of enemy fire. Ryan's hands moved expertly over the controls. His mind was sharp, focused only on survival. Each alien ship he destroyed was a small victory, but he knew it wasn't enough. The Zorth were everywhere, and the Queen's flagship, an enormous vessel like a floating fortress, loomed on the horizon. All units, we are outnumbered. Our shields are weakening. Came another transmission. The voice of a fellow pilot, desperate and afraid, crackled through the radio. Ryan didn't flinch. He had seen this before. In battle, fear was the enemy's greatest weapon. If he gave in to fear, he would lose the fight. Instead, he focused on the task at hand. In the distance, the Zorth Queen's flagship grew larger. It was a terrifying sight, a dark, spiked ship that seemed to warp the very fabric of space around it. Its surface was covered in thick, armored plating, and its weapons were enormous. The Queen was aboard that ship, commanding her forces with ruthless precision. Ryan knew that if he could somehow get close enough to her flagship, he might be able to make a difference. He pushed his fighter forward, weaving through enemy fire and dodging the enemy's advanced weaponry. He was in the zone now, his focus unwavering. The Viper was built for speed and agility, and Ryan used every advantage it had. His enemies were fast, but Ryan was faster. As he neared the flagship, he saw it, the Zorth Queen herself, standing at the bridge of her ship, surrounded by her commanders. She was an imposing figure, her insectoid body towering over the others, with gleaming red eyes that seemed to burn with fury. She was a being of pure power, both physically and mentally, and in her presence, Ryan could feel a cold, suffocating force that threatened to crush him. But Ryan did not fear her. He had faced her in battle before, and he knew that fear was what she thrived on. He couldn't afford to give her that advantage. All units, we need to take down the Queen's flagship. It's the only way we stand a chance. Ryan's voice cut through the radio waves. Calm and steady despite the chaos around him, the few remaining human fighters followed his lead, and together they charged toward the heart of the enemy forces. Suddenly, Ryan's fighter was struck by a massive energy blast, shaking him violently in his seat. Warning lights flashed across his console as the ship's shields flickered and failed. He was hit. The Viper was damaged, but Ryan didn't have time to think about that. He had one mission: stop the Queen. His hands moved quickly over the controls, rerouting power from the damaged systems into the ship's engines. The Viper roared forward, a comet of destruction, as Ryan dove straight toward the flagship. He could see her now. The Queen was watching him, her eyes narrowing as she raised her hand. Ryan knew what she was about to do. She was going to use her psychic powers to crush him. The air around him seemed to thicken as her mind reached out to his. It was an invisible force, like a weight pressing on his chest. For a moment, it was as if the entire universe stood still. Ryan struggled against it, but her power was overwhelming. But then, something shifted. Ryan's mind, though weary and battered, pushed back. His will was the only thing left that was his own. And in that moment, it was enough. The psychic pressure eased, and for the briefest of moments, Ryan felt a surge of strength. It wasn't from his ship or his weapons, it was from himself. He was fighting with everything he had, and that was something the Queen hadn't anticipated. With renewed determination, Ryan pushed his fighter even closer to the flagship, dodging incoming fire from the Zorth ships. He could see the Queen's face twist into a snarl as she realized she had underestimated him. But it was too late. Ryan had already made his move. In one final, desperate maneuver, he released a full volley of missiles at the flagship's weak points. They struck with deadly accuracy, punching through the ship's armor. The explosion was massive, and for a moment, the battlefield was engulfed in light. Ryan's fighter, heavily damaged, continued its downward spiral toward Earth. The mission had been a success, but at what cost? The Zorth flagship was crippled, and the Queen was forced to retreat, but Ryan had no way of knowing if he would survive. As the Viper plummeted toward Earth's atmosphere, Ryan lost consciousness. He didn't know if he would wake up to see Earth again. But he knew one thing: humanity had fought back. For the first time in years, there was hope. The sky above Earth had been a canvas of fire and destruction. Ryan's final attack had left the Zorth Queen's flagship in ruins, but the battle was far from over. As the massive warships fell from the heavens, the remaining Zorth forces withdrew, retreating to their last strongholds in the vast darkness of space. Yet, despite this temporary victory, the question remained: could humanity really hold on? Or was the war just entering a more dangerous phase? Ryan Hayes' Viper fighter was badly damaged. Its engines had been crippled, its systems failing. As it fell through Earth's atmosphere, sparks flew from the hull, and the cockpit rattled with violent turbulence. The force of re-entry was unbearable, and Ryan fought to stay conscious. His vision blurred, and his breath came in short, painful gasps. He didn't know if he was going to survive, but in his mind, there was only one thought. He had given everything. His fighter finally slammed into the ground, skidding along the barren land just outside the remnants of a destroyed city. The explosion when it landed was deafening, and for a moment, everything went black. When Ryan regained consciousness, he was in a makeshift medical facility, the faint hum of machines filling the air. He could feel a sharp pain in his chest and legs, but his body was alive. For a moment, he couldn't remember where he was. The last thing he could clearly recall was the attack on the Zorth Queen's flagship. Slowly, the details began to piece together. He had done it. His final strike had forced the Zorth to retreat. But he also knew that the battle wasn't truly won. The Queen's Scarth was not easily defeated. He tried to sit up, but a sharp pain shot through his body, forcing him to lie back down. The room was dimly lit, with the smell of antiseptic hanging in the air. His thoughts drifted, but he couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that something was off. "You're awake," a voice broke through his thoughts. Ryan turned his head toward the voice. Standing at the foot of his bed was Dr. Sarah Klein, a leading medical officer with the Earth Defense Fleet. She was scanning him with a small tablet in her hand, her expression serious but relieved. "You gave us all a scare," she said. "You took quite a hit, Lieutenant." Ryan tried to smile, but it hurt. "How long?" "About 6 hours. We weren't sure if you'd make it. You've lost a lot of blood, and your body's been through a lot. But you're alive, and that's what matters." Ryan nodded, but his thoughts were elsewhere. The battle, the explosion. Had it been enough? He wanted to ask about the Zorth Queen. Had they retreated for good? Or was this just a temporary setback? Is the war over? He finally asked, his voice weak. Dr. Klein shook her head, her face grim. No, Lieutenant. The retreat was just a pause. The Zorth are still out there. We don't know where their queen is, but they've started regrouping. They're planning something, and we think they might be getting ready for something far worse. Ryan felt a cold chill run down his spine. He had known the Zorth Queen wasn't going to give up easily, but he hadn't expected this. We're preparing for another assault, Dr. Klein continued. But right now, we need to focus on getting you back on your feet. You've done enough. You saved Earth. You should rest. Ryan could see the sincerity in her eyes. But he knew that resting was not an option. Not now. Not when Earth was still at risk. He pushed himself up against the bed, wincing at the pain that shot through his body. He didn't have time to rest. I need to see Commander Brooks, he said, his voice firm. Now, Commander Eleanor Brooks was the leader of Earth's remaining forces. She was a fierce strategist and had led the defense against the Zorth for years. Ryan had served under her since the war began, and they shared a mutual respect for each other. But now, as the Earth Defense Fleet prepared for its final stand, the pressure was mounting. When Ryan entered the command center, he could feel the weight of the room. Officers and technicians worked in silence, monitoring the enemy's movements on the holographic maps that covered the walls. Commander Brooks stood at the center of it all, her eyes focused on the screens in front of her. Lieutenant Hayes, she greeted him, her voice cold but acknowledging. I'm surprised to see you up so soon. You should be resting. I don't have time for that, Commander, Ryan said, his voice sharp. The Zorth are planning something. What are we doing to stop them? Commander Brooks didn't look up at first, but then she turned her gaze toward him. We're doing everything we can. Our forces are scattered, but we're gathering what's left of the fleet. The Zorth Queen's flagship is crippled, but she's still out there. We have intel suggesting she's headed to a hidden base in deep space. If we don't stop her there, she could have the resources to launch another full-scale attack on Earth. We can't afford that. Ryan's mind raced. A hidden base? Deep space? It didn't matter. He had already given everything. He wasn't going to sit back now. I'm ready to go, he said firmly. Whatever it takes. Commander Brooks stared at him for a long moment, then nodded. You're not fully healed, Hayes. You can't go back into the fight like this. Ryan met her gaze. I don't care. If I have to go alone, I will. We can't afford to wait. If the Queen's alive, we have to stop her before she gathers more strength. Brooks sighed, rubbing her temples. She knew he was right. As much as she hated the idea of sending him back into battle while he was still recovering. Ryan Hayes had always been the one who got results. And if he said the Queen was the priority, then she believed him. All right, she said after a long pause. We'll send a strike team to follow her, but I'm not sending you alone. You lead a small squadron, and we'll back you up with what's left of the fleet. Ryan nodded. It wasn't ideal, but it was something. A chance to stop the Queen before she could regroup and make her final play. As the plans began to fall into place, Ryan found himself looking out of the command center's viewports at the Earth below. It was a fragile thing now, the planet he had once sworn to protect. It was scarred, battered, but still alive. And as long as it still had breath, Ryan would fight to protect it. He had given everything to this cause, and he would give even more if it meant saving his world. The news of the new mission spread quickly through the ranks. Humanity's hope, though battered, was not broken. Ryan's attack on the Zorth Queen's flagship had inspired them. They knew the war was not over, but they also knew they had one final chance to end it. The Zorth Queen was still out there, waiting. And Ryan Hayes, the fighter who had already given everything, was ready to face her again. The sky above Earth had turned dark and ominous as the fleet prepared for its next move. The Zorth Queen was still out there, and Commander Brooks knew they had no time to waste. Ryan Hayes' recent victory, though significant, had not been enough to defeat the enemy once and for all. The Zorth were regrouping, and it was only a matter of time before they struck again. Ryan sat in the cockpit of the Viper, his fighter, staring at the vastness of space before him. His body still ached from the wounds he had sustained in the previous battle, but the pain was nothing compared to the weight of what lay ahead. He had given everything before, But now, he had to give even more. The fate of Earth and humanity itself was in his hands. Lieutenant Hayes, are you ready? A voice crackled through his comms. It was Commander Brooks. I'm always ready, Commander, Ryan responded, his voice steady. Good. Brooks said, her tone firm. We're launching the strike team in 30 minutes. You'll be leading a squadron of the best pilots we have left. You're going after the Zorth Queen, and we're not coming back until she's stopped for good. Ryan's grip tightened around the controls of the Viper. He had been in plenty of battles, but this felt different. The Zorth Queen, Scarith, was unlike any enemy they had faced. She wasn't just a leader. She was a force of nature, and despite their best efforts, she had proven to be nearly unstoppable. We'll stop her, Ryan said, his voice resolute. I'm not coming back without her head. The fleet, what was left of it, was small but determined. The Earth Defense Fleet had been battered in the last few years of the war, but it still had the heart to fight. Ryan's squadron was composed of the best pilots left, men and women, who had survived countless battles and were ready to give everything for their home. As they approached the Zorth's hidden base, deep in uncharted space, Ryan could feel the tension in the air. The mission ahead was dangerous. The Zorth were known for their cunning and ruthlessness, and they had likely prepared traps for the humans. But there was no turning back now. The fate of humanity depended on them succeeding. All right, team, Ryan said, speaking to his squadron over the comms. We go in fast, hit hard, and make sure they never see us coming. We're taking down the Queen today. No excuses. The other pilots, all veterans of the war, responded with determination in their voices. They knew the stakes. They knew the risks. But they also knew that this was their best chance to win the war. The squadron entered the heart of the Zorth's territory, a desolate region of space where no human ship had ventured before. The Zorth base was hidden within a massive asteroid field, surrounded by countless traps and defense systems. But the humans had a secret weapon. Ryan Hayes, he led his squadron through the maze of asteroids, expertly dodging the Zorth's defensive fire. His fighter moved like an extension of his own body, every movement precise and calculated. The others followed his lead, trusting him to guide them through the dangers ahead. They made their way deeper into the asteroid field, and soon they could see it, the Zorth Queen's massive flagship, hidden in the heart of the base. It was an imposing sight, a dark, jagged vessel that seemed to warp space itself. It was surrounded by hundreds of Zorth warships, all waiting for the command to strike. Ryan's heart pounded in his chest. This was it, the moment he had been preparing for. He glanced at his squadron, their faces set with determination. They were ready. We hit hard and fast, Ryan ordered. We go straight for the Queen. Keep your eyes open and watch each other's backs. With that, they launched their attack. The battle was fierce from the moment they engaged the enemy. Ryan's squadron cut through the Zorth defenses with ruthless precision. His fighters darted between asteroids, dodging laser blasts and returning fire with deadly accuracy. Every move they made was calculated, and every shot was aimed at the heart of the enemy. Ryan's Viper led the charge, weaving through the chaos as if it were an extension of his own body. He fired missile after missile, taking down one enemy ship after another. But even as he fought, he knew the true challenge lay ahead. The Zorth Queen's flagship was still out of reach, and it was surrounded by a wall of enemy forces. Watch your six, Hayes, one of the pilots shouted over the comms. Ryan glanced to his left and saw one of his squadron members, Lieutenant Jessica Mallory, being pursued by a Zorth fighter. Without hesitation, he spun his Viper round and fired a barrage of laser blasts, destroying the enemy ship before it could get a shot off. Mallory nodded her thanks, but there was no time to celebrate. The Queen was still out there. Keep pushing forward, Ryan ordered. We're almost there. They pressed on, taking out Zorth warships one by one as they moved closer to the flagship. Ryan's squadron was making progress, but the Zorth were relentless. The Zorth Queen had prepared for this moment, and she wasn't going down without a fight. As they neared the flagship, the Zorth forces grew more desperate. Ryan could see the Queen's dark, jagged ship looming ahead, a symbol of the destruction she had brought to Earth and countless other worlds. It was a fitting target for the final strike. Everyone, falling behind me, Ryan commanded. His squadron formed up behind him, ready for the final push. The Zorth flagship was in their sights, and Ryan's hands tightened on the controls. This was it, the end of the war, the moment that would decide the fate of Earth. The Zorth Queen's flagship unleashed a torrent of fire, but Ryan and his squadron were ready. They weaved through the barrage of lasers and missiles, their fighters moving with deadly grace. Ryan's heart pounded in his chest as he locked onto the Queen's flagship, guiding his squadron to the perfect angle of attack. The flagship's shields flickered as they hit it with everything they had. The explosion was massive, lighting up the darkness of space. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze. The Zorth flagship shuddered, and then, with a deafening roar, it exploded into a million pieces, sending shock waves through the battlefield. Ryan's squadron cheered over the comms. But Ryan knew the battle wasn't over. The Zorth Queen herself was still alive. She would fight to the very end. And Ryan Hayes, though weary and battered, was determined to make sure that end came soon. The remnants of the Zorth flagship floated in space, its destruction sending a shockwave through the battlefield. But as the last remnants of fire and debris faded, Ryan Hayes knew the victory was only half won. The Zorth Queen, Scarith, was not dead yet, and no one, especially her, would give up that easily. Ryan sat in the cockpit of the Viper, staring out at the empty void. His squadron was regrouping after their attack, but there was no time to celebrate. The battle had only just begun. They had taken down a significant portion of the Zorth fleet, but the Queen herself was still alive, somewhere out there. Ryan's mission wasn't over until she was stopped for good. "We hit them hard," Lieutenant Mallory said over the comms. "But she's still out there. We need to find her before she rebuilds her strength." Ryan's mind raced. He knew she wouldn't run. Scarith was far too proud and powerful to retreat. She would have a plan, a backup. And if he didn't find her first, she would find a way to destroy Earth once and for all. "We don't have the luxury of waiting," Ryan said firmly. "We'll take the fight to her." He glanced at the data on his screen, searching for any hint of the Queen's next move. The Zorth were clever, always one step ahead. And it wasn't just about military might. The Queen's psychic abilities could manipulate the battlefield, making her a deadly enemy in ways that went beyond just technology. "There's something," Ryan said, his eyes narrowing as a new signal appeared on the radar. "There's a moon, way out past the asteroid field. It's not showing up on normal scans, almost like it's cloaked. But there's a strong energy source coming from it. That's where she's hiding. Are you sure?" Commander Brooks' voice crackled in his earpiece. "It could be a trap. I don't care," Ryan replied, his voice hard. "We can't let her rebuild. If that's where she's hiding, we're going in." Ryan and his squadron followed him through the vast emptiness of space, heading toward the unknown moon. The strange energy signature had only appeared after the destruction of the Zorth flagship, but Ryan's instincts told him it was important. The moon wasn't on any known maps, and it was surrounded by an eerie, unnatural silence. As they approached, the moon slowly revealed itself, an ancient, barren rock hidden by an invisible cloak. Its surface was covered in jagged cliffs and craters, casting long shadows over the desolation. But Ryan felt a strange pull. Something was off about this place, like it had been untouched for centuries. They landed near the dark edge of the moon's surface, where the energy readings were the strongest. The squadron disembarked, their boots crunching on the rocky ground. It was a cold, lifeless place, and there was no sign of the Zorth. "At least, not yet. We need to find out what she's doing here," Ryan said, adjusting the straps of his pack. "Stay alert. This could be a trap." The team moved forward cautiously, keeping their weapons ready as they trekked across the barren landscape. The energy readings were growing stronger, leading them deeper into the moon. Eventually, they came to a massive cave entrance, hidden behind a cluster of jagged rocks. Ryan could feel the pull of the energy, stronger now. "Looks like we found it," Mallory said, her voice low. "Whatever she's hiding, it's in there." Ryan nodded. "Let's go." The squadron moved into the cave, the cold air biting at their skin. Inside, the walls shimmered with strange symbols, alien markings that Ryan had never seen before. The cave was more like a forgotten temple than a natural formation. There was something ancient about it, something that didn't belong. "I don't like this," said Sergeant Luke Thompson, one of Ryan's trusted pilots. "This place feels wrong." "I know," Ryan said, his voice tense. "But we don't have a choice. We need to keep moving." They followed the winding tunnels deeper into the cave. The walls seemed to close in around them as the energy readings grew stronger. Ryan felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Finally, they reached the heart of the cave, a massive chamber, glowing with an unnatural light. At the center of the room was a dark, pulsing crystal, its surface covered in strange carvings. The energy radiated from it like a storm, filling the air with a strange hum. And standing in front of the crystal, waiting for them, was Scarith, the Zorth Queen. Ryan's breath caught in his throat. She had known they would come. The queen stood tall, her insectoid form more monstrous than ever, her red eyes glowing with malicious intent. Her psychic presence filled the room like a storm, pushing against Ryan and his team. "You should not have come here," Scarith said, her voice booming through their minds. "This is where the war will end. Not with your victory, but with mine." Ryan took a step forward, his voice steady despite the overwhelming pressure he felt. "It ends today, Queen. This is where your reign of terror ends." The Queen laughed, the sound reverberating in their minds like thunder. "You think you can stop me? I have control over this world. This power is beyond your understanding." Ryan could feel the psychic force pushing against him, threatening to crush his mind. But he stood firm, ignoring the pressure. He had faced worse, and he wasn't going to back down now. "Listen to me, Scarith," Ryan said, his voice low but full of determination. "You've destroyed enough lives. Earth will not fall. We've fought too hard, and we're not giving up." The Zorth Queen's eyes glowed brighter, her psychic energy swirling around her like a storm. She reached out with her mind, pulling at the energy in the chamber, and suddenly, the crystal in the center of the room began to pulse with power. Ryan's team scattered as the ground beneath them trembled. The crystal's energy began to form into a massive wave, blasting outward in all directions. Ryan raised his hand, trying to shield himself from the force, but it was no use. The psychic wave slammed into him, knocking him off his feet. He struggled to stay conscious as the world around him spun. He could hear the cries of his squadron members, the sound of the cave collapsing. But he refused to give up. His vision blurred, but through the haze, he saw Scarith raising her arms, the crystal's power enveloping her like an armor. "Do you see now, human?" The Queen's voice echoed in his mind. "I will destroy your world, and there is nothing you can do to stop me." But Ryan, battered and exhausted, was not going to let her win. He fought against the psychic wave, focusing all of his strength into one thought: protect Earth. He reached into his mind, pulling the remnants of his energy together. The psychic force was overwhelming, but Ryan wasn't alone. His squadron was still fighting, still standing by his side. With a final burst of willpower, Ryan pushed forward, reaching for the crystal at the center of the room. The ground shook violently as he drew on the last of his strength. The crystal began to crack, its energy surging out of control. "No!" Scarith screamed, her psychic power flaring wildly as the crystal began to shatter. The chamber erupted in light. The chamber shook violently as the crystal's power cracked and splintered under Ryan's pressure. The Zorth Queen, Scarith, screamed in fury, her psychic power flaring wildly as the chamber around them began to crumble. The walls cracked, sending chunks of rock tumbling down, and the ground trembled beneath their feet. Ryan's vision was blurred, his body aching with exhaustion, but he kept his eyes fixed on the Zorth Queen. This was the moment. The crystal was breaking, and with it, her power was slipping away. The cave was collapsing, but they couldn't afford to let her escape now. If they didn't finish this, Earth would be lost forever. The Queen's voice echoed in his mind, twisted with rage. "You dare challenge me, human? You think you can stop me? You cannot destroy what you do not understand." Ryan pushed through the psychic pressure that pressed against his mind, focusing on the crystal. The last of the Zorth's power was contained within it. If they destroyed it completely, Scarith would be weak, vulnerable. He had to end this now. Stay back. Ryan shouted to his squadron, who had already begun to regroup after the initial blast from the crystal's energy. They were all battered and injured, but they were still fighting. They knew the stakes. Ryan took a step forward, pushing his way through the rubble. Scareth's psychic power was like a storm, crashing against him from all sides. But he couldn't stop now. He reached out with his remaining strength, his hands trembling as they moved toward the crystal. He was already drained, but the sight of Earth, of humanity's future, pushed him forward. The crystal pulsed again, but this time it flickered. The energy that had once been so solid and unyielding began to wane. Ryan could feel it. He was getting closer. "You cannot," Scareth screamed, her voice more desperate now. "I am eternal. I will never die." But Ryan didn't listen. He didn't need to. He had already made his choice. His hands grasped the shattered edges of the crystal, and with one final, desperate pull, he tore it apart. There was a blinding flash of light. When the light faded and the dust settled, everything was silent. Ryan's body ached. His limbs felt like they were made of stone, and he could barely keep his eyes open. But he had done it. He had destroyed the crystal. The Queen's power was gone. He fell to his knees, gasping for breath. He couldn't hear anything over the ringing in his ears, but he knew it was over. The Queen was finished. The war was over. The ground beneath him rumbled again. But this time, it wasn't the crystal's power. It was the collapse of the cave itself, as if the very foundation of the Zorth's hold on this moon was crumbling away. With their Queen's defeat, Ryan tried to push himself up, but his body refused to cooperate. His hands gripped the rocky floor, and he could feel the tremors beneath him growing stronger. The cave was going to collapse entirely. The team had to get out now. "Ryan," Lieutenant Mallory shouted, her voice full of urgency. "We need to move now." Ryan managed to lift his head just enough to see his squadron rushing toward him. They had all made it through the chaos, and they weren't leaving without him. Mallory, Sergeant Thompson, and the rest of the team helped him to his feet. They didn't have time to waste. "We're not leaving you behind," Mallory said firmly. Together, they moved through the collapsing cave, the sounds of destruction echoing all around them. They had one goal now: get out before it was too late. The moon was falling apart, and they had to reach their ships. Their fighters were parked just outside the cave entrance. But the path was becoming increasingly treacherous. The entire surface of the moon was cracking, and large boulders were tumbling from the ceiling. "Keep moving," Ryan urged, his voice strained. "Don't stop." They pushed forward, dodging falling rocks and navigating the unstable terrain. Ryan could feel the ground shifting beneath his feet, but his squadron didn't slow down. They kept moving, staying together, as the moon around them continued to crumble. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they reached the exit. Ryan's Viper was waiting for him, a lifeline in the chaos. His squadron made it to their ships, climbing into their cockpits with practiced precision. The launch sequence started immediately, and the engines roared to life. As Ryan lifted off from the moon's surface, he took one last look at the destruction behind him. The moon was breaking apart, pieces of it tumbling into space like shattered glass. The Zorth's last stronghold was gone. He leaned back in his seat, exhaustion overwhelming him. It had been a long road, and he had given everything he had. But now, Earth was safe. The war was over. The journey back to Earth was slow, and Ryan barely had the strength to keep his eyes open. He drifted in and out of consciousness, his mind replaying everything that had happened: the battles, the losses, the sacrifices. But through it all, he had fought. He had given everything. When they finally arrived back at Earth's orbit, the Earth Defense Fleet was waiting. The remaining ships had been battered and broken, but they had survived. They had won. Ryan's squadron was hailed as heroes. Commander Brooks greeted them with a look of relief and pride. But Ryan couldn't quite feel the victory. He had done what he needed to do, but he couldn't forget the cost. Too many lives had been lost. Too much had been sacrificed. "Lieutenant Hayes," Brooks said, her voice soft but full of gratitude. "You did it. You saved us all." Ryan nodded, though the weight of the battle still hung heavily on his shoulders. "We did it together," he said quietly, his voice rough. "All of us. The victory was theirs, But Ryan knew that the scars of the war would never fade. Humanity had fought back, but the memory of what had been lost would remain. The war had ended, but the healing had only just begun. As Ryan looked out at Earth, now safe once more, he knew one thing for certain. They had won because they refused to give up, and that was something no enemy could ever take away.